The myth of Sisyphus. So basically, there was a city called Euryphia. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Well, basically, there was a king named Sisyphus who was really cruel and mean, but he made Euryphia really prosperous. He basically would kill people just to show his power, and he also married his niece and seduced her, and made her his queen. And this kind of bothered the gods because his hospitality was something that they really valued, and he did not do any of that. So that is his wife. So one day, everything was fine until Zeus took the form of an eagle and decided to take a nymph named Aegina. And this was troublesome because of the fact that Aegina, there she is yelling help, Aegina's father, who was the river god Aethelpus, he was upset because he didn't know where his daughter was. So he traveled to Euryphia and talked to Sisyphus and basically asked him to tell him where Zeus took his daughter, and in exchange he would give Euryphia a river. And this basically made Zeus very angry that Sisyphus and Aethelpus made a deal together. So then he sent the god of death to take Sisyphus and punish him for what he had done. So death ended up taking Sisyphus and wanting to chain him up to the chains of death, which basically made him stay there forever. But Sisyphus actually tricked Death and asked him how do the chains work and to show him how they work. And Death ended up chaining himself to these chains and ended up staying there forever until he was able to escape later. So then Sisyphus was living his best life, in Euryphia, and then until one day he became very sick and was almost at the point of death. And he told his wife, his queen, aka his niece, to, when he dies, throw his body off their castle and into the river. That's the way that he wants to be buried. So she ends up doing that for him, and Sisyphus ended up going down the river and ending up by Persephone in the underworld, and she is the queen of the underworld. And he ends up asking her for a deal and tells her that his wife did not give him a proper burial, so he wants to go back to tell her to give him a proper burial, and she says that she'll allow this as long as Sisyphus promises to come back after it is done. And knowing Sisyphus, they agree to this, and it is a deal. But Sisyphus decides to trick the gods again and decides to not uphold his part of the bargain. So then the gods find out about this, and Zeus becomes very angry and decides to get Sisyphus and finally deal with him once and for all and punish him for good. So Sisyphus's punishment was to roll this gigantic boulder up this huge hill. And what would happen is every time Sisyphus would be right at the top, so close to the top where he would almost be done, it would roll down again. And so he had to do that for all of eternity. So that's the end of the story. Thank you. This myth is reflective and essential to the Greek culture because it sets some of the key values Greeks had. For example, we are responsible for our own happiness. Like Sisyphus, we somehow find meaning and joy in our daily tasks and pushing through our problems, aka our rocks. We find joy within ourselves after we accept our fate like Sisyphus did. Also, we are in charge of our own happiness. Find a passion and turn our labors into love. The Greeks incorporated these lessons into their daily lives. With Greek culture, I think they learned in Sisyphus that the gods are in control and that they will punish you if you go against them. This shaped the way that they lived because they tried to live in accordance with the gods. In the myth, Sisyphus, we also get a sense of the geography, such as the hills and mountains and streams. The hills and mountains because of the hill that Sisyphus had to roll his boulder up, and the streams because of the river god that they gave. Overall, I think the myth of Sisyphus had an impact and helped shape modern-day Greece.